Hey there, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. I want to take you on a brief tour of the Fab Filter Pro L2 limiter. If you've been following me for any length of time, you know I never review plugins, mainly because I just don't really ever buy any. I just like to use the stock stuff. It works fine. This is one exception. I was on a retreat. Ronan Chris Murphy did his mountain recording retreat and so graciously invited me along, and he used a bunch of Fab Filter stuff. And the limiter especially, I had something about it that I liked. So when I came home and had a mastering session waiting for me, I decided to try the free trial. I think it's a 30-day demo. And so I used it a bunch, loved it. The demo expired, and I went over and bought that sucker. I think it was about $200. I know you can get it in bundles, but I just wanted the limiter, and that's what I did. So this isn't a paid advertisement, and this isn't going to be an exhaustive review. Arguably one of the worst reviews you're going to watch of this, because I'm not interested in all the different settings. I'm interested in how it sounds and if it fits into my workflow in a way that makes it better. That's the only criteria. So I'm going to introduce it to you, if you've never heard it before, introduce it to you the way I introduced it to myself. So what I did, I brought it into a mastering session and I just started pushing the gain just to see what it sounds like. So the layout of the plugin, it's a little different than you're used to. There's a visual readout of what's happening in the audio, which is super cool. And then here's the gain there. Now, I always set my limiters to a ceiling of -1, and I've got it set to true peak limiting, oversampling, and the transparent sort of preset style algorithm, whatever you want to call it. But that's about it. That's the bulk of my research, was just to find out what these meant. You've got punchy, dynamic, all around, aggressive, blah, blah, blah. And I decided to stick with transparent. I might show you punchy in a minute. But so this is it. So I decided, I pulled in a mix and I started pushing volume into it. And what I noticed was it responded differently than the stock limiter that I'm so used to from Studio One. So I use Studio One Professional from PreSonus. This is the limiter that comes with it. This is what I've used to master a bunch of stuff, including my own music. I don't think it's bad, and I'm proud of the stuff I've released, but I did like the Pro L2 better, which kind of makes sense, but I was honestly just a little bit surprised because it did respond so well. So let me first show you what I'm used to when I push the volume on the PreSonus limiter. So I've got a song here. This is the song from season 3 of Mixed Together called You're Not Alone, which you may recall. Just love it. So we're going to push that into these limiters and see if we can break something or see what it sounds like. So first we'll start with the PreSonus. I'm going to push the volume up. I'll keep my hand on the fader so it doesn't go nuts in your ears, but you can hear what happens to the sound as we start getting a decent amount of limiting, okay? I'm going to hit play and we're going to dive in as soon as I can get things on the screen like I want them. Perfect. Here we go. So that's, if you're familiar with mastering in like the K14 meter, that is way, way too loud. I mean, we're pushing way up into the red. We got 5-6 dB of gain reduction happening. That's not where I would put it to master, but it's where I wanted to go just to hear. That's what I'm used to hearing. When I push this limiter too hard, it gets crunchy and kind of upper mid-rangey. It just doesn't sound super great, as you can hear here. The low end becomes a little bit non-existent. The upper mid-range gets a little funky, and of course there's artifacts and distortion happening all over the place. So that's the normal limiter. Now, why am I pushing it that loud? I just want to see how it responds, because we use limiters to increase loudness. I'm a big fan of Ian Shepherd. I'm a big fan of quieter limits or quieter masters, because there's no need to push it to super loud levels because the streaming platforms will turn it down anyway. I also think things sound better, and I just don't like to go nuts with mastering. But when you're testing out a limiter, that's the time to go nuts. So let's go nuts on the Fab Filter now. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to reach and pull it up to probably push it up to about the same volume we had before and see what it sounds like. Here we go. Pro tip, it helps if you turn the plugin on before you start messing with it. Here we go. Now, it's still, first of all, that the readout is just cool, and it keeps going. As long it's fun to watch, which is totally against everything you should believe in. You should mix and master with your ears, but that's pretty cool. But my first impression of this, when I pulled it into a session and I just cranked the gain into the limiter, it just didn't sound all that bad. I mean, that's got some crunchiness. It's still too loud, but when we compare that to the PreSonus and the stock limiter, it handles it a lot better. It feels a lot more musical. Let's listen to that again real quick. And then compare that to the PreSonus, which was up at about 9 dB of gain. I just pulled it back down. I ruined the comparison. Okay, now they're the same. Let's go Fab Filter first, and then I'll go to PreSonus. I don't know how well that's going to translate over the YouTubes, but what I hear is the PreSonus has just a little more kind of, it loses depth and it has a little more crunchy sounding, and the mid-range gets all wonky. Whereas the Fab Filter, even at this stupid, insane loudness, it still kind of has a little bit of a low end to it. It's still fairly defined, being that it's so loud. Aside from that, the metering is pretty sick. You have lots of different ways of measuring the loudness. You've got it's got the standard RMS meters. It's got the loudness meters, which I still don't quite understand. It's got K14, which is what I've used a lot in the past. Lots of cool stuff going on there. But the big kicker for me was when I pushed volume into it, it had a musical response. So now let me just demonstrate it a little bit more and show you what I like to use. So let's start over, not at an insane volume. Let's pull the volume up a little bit, get it to a decent level, and I'll show you a couple other things that I like. So I'm boosting it about 5.5 dB, and just looking at the K-system metering, I'm hitting the red a little bit, but I'm staying pretty firmly in the yellow, which feels conservative to me. You can see the limiter's not hitting every single note. It's just kind of smacking it down when it needs to smack it down, right? Now, here's what's cool. This sounds good to me. This could work as a master. When you switch to the punchy setting, and there's a bunch here, I haven't gone through all of them because I just don't want to, but when you switch to the punchy setting, listen to the low end. Something interesting happens. I don't know what's happening. I don't really care to know, but it is different. So different songs and different projects, I will use a different setting depending on what's needed, but for rock stuff, I really do like the punchy setting. So take a listen. I'm sure people much smarter than me and more willing to read manuals would tell me exactly what's happening there, but it just feels like the low end is getting a bit more of a pass. So maybe there's an element of multiband under the hood that's allowing the low end to not slam the limiter as hard, but it feels, as the name would suggest, a little punchier to me. For some projects, the punchy does not work. It ends up just being kind of muddy and muffled before we do anything with EQ, but with rock stuff especially, I really like that punchy setting. So those are the things I love about Fab Filter. The simplicity of it, the fact that there's a lot of controls for the nerds among us that really want to get in and go to town on that. But for me, a single slider and a single switch to change kind of the sound of the limiter, those make it a big win for me. So if you haven't checked it out, they do offer, at least currently, some sort of a free trial. I believe it's 30 days. Check it out on their website. You can download it, use it for free, get a feel for it. Do what I've done here. Pull in your favorite limiter and crank the volume into that, and then switch over to the Fab Filter and crank the volume into that. Experience it for yourself. If you shrug and say, meh, then maybe it's not a worthwhile thing to look into. But if it's kind of a head turner for you like it was for me, well, there you go. Then you can decide if it's worth shelling out some money for. I ended up buying it because I really do like it, and that says a lot because I don't buy plugins almost ever. All right, thanks so much for watching this video. If you like mixing and mastering, which I know you do, then you would love my 5-step mix guide. You can check that out over at, hold please, 5stepmix.com, and that will pull up this here page. Click there, put your email address in, I'll send it to you. It's super awesome. Look, you can even read the first page for free. How nice is that? Well, the whole thing's free. Love for you to check that out, 5stepmix.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe from Home Studio Corner, and I'll see you in the next one.